So today I'm talking about a Toyota with the check charging system message that displays on the dashboard, what it is and how you go about fixing it. So what is the Toyota check charging system message? Well, it basically just means that the onboard computer doesn't see the alternator working and outputting power to keep the battery charged. So when you see this message, the vehicle is just operating from the battery, which isn't getting a charge from the alternator. And this message can come on when the engine's not running, like the keys in the accessory position or something like that. This can come on, and that's not an issue. That's normal. What isn't normal is if the engine's running and you see this message. Because if the engine's running, the alternator should be working and it should be charging the battery. So if you see this message and the engine's not running, that's not an issue. But if you see this message and the engine is running, then that is a problem and you have to get it checked out. And so if that is the case, then some of the possible causes, well, it could be a bad battery, it could be in the wiring, it could be a bad alternator, and possibly a blown fuse. And so the first thing to do, if you get this message and the engine is running, is to go check out the battery. And one of the first things to check is be sure these terminals are all good, that they're not corroded or anything like that. They're making good connections, that there's no issues there, because that's very common to have corroded battery terminals. And there's different ways you go about testing the battery if you wanted to. One really quick way to do it is just find the date on it. There's usually a date stamped on it. And if it's over 5 years old, then very likely it's time to get replaced. But first thing to do is go check out the battery and make sure those terminals all look good and that they're all connected good. And if that all looks good, the next thing to do is to check for a blown fuse. There'll be a fuse box inside the engine compartment that'll have a fuse, and one of them will be for the alternator. And if you pop open the cover, you'll see something like this right here where it says alt or something along these lines, and it says 7.5 amp fuse. And this is a 2017 Toyota Camry, and this 7.5 amp fuse right here, that's for the alternator. So if that blows, then that can cause an issue and the alternator won't be working. So check for a blown fuse. And so if you check all that, if you check for a blown fuse, you check the battery connections, that all looks good, the battery all looks good, then there's some basic tests that you could do to test the alternator. It's fairly simple. All you need is a multimeter. And what you do is you just measure the voltage at the battery terminals with the engine off, with the engine not running. And it should be like 12.30 to 12.90, something along these lines. And then what you do is you start the engine up and you measure the voltage again. And it should go up. It should go up to like 14 to 14.5 volts, something along those lines. And if it does, then that means the alternator's working right. If it doesn't, and it stays down around 12, 13 volts, and it doesn't go up, then there's a problem with the alternator. It's not outputting no power. And so if the voltage doesn't go up and it stays around 12, 13 volts, then very likely there is some kind of issue going on with the alternator. And so there's some different ways you can go about testing the alternator. And the most common method is just to remove it and to take it to an auto parts store, and they'll test it for free and tell you if it's good or bad or not. Of course, be sure to call around first and be sure that they do it in your area. But that's a very common method, that if you're not getting no output, if you're not getting at least 14 volts coming from the alternator, then there's probably very likely something wrong with the alternator at that point. And so that's basically it. I just want to do a real quick video on what you could do if you see the check charging system message on your dashboard on your Toyota. If you have anything to add, please comment down below. If you have any questions, ask me and I'll try to answer them. If this video helps you, please click like, please click subscribe, and have a good day.